So the next step in this little right triangulation is to do the same for the opposite corner of any 2 points, whether they're actual points or implied points. And completing this rectangle. There's no law that says you can't do the you can't sort of think of this second triangle I'm making first. It's just that I'm right-handed, and what's most comfortable for me is doing it in this sort of sequence. But I'm going to show you the main reason why this is a really helpful skill to be able to understand and do, both sketching out and just in your, like I say, your mind's eye, in just a sec. Let's see. I have one more. So here's some, this is pretty exciting drawing stuff, I know. So why am I even talking about this? One of the most helpful things and important things to be able to get good at and understand quickly is at what angle either an implied line or an actual line in any drawing may be. And when the question of what angle, term angle, gets thrown around a lot, and I know there's probably tilt is probably a more accurate term, excuse me, or slope even, but that's going back to. Anyways, it's critical to get a feel for these, at what degree, at how sort of flat or how vertical or at what angle these things are. There's ways of kind of thinking about it. One is a clock. I haven't had great success with that, but some people do. But when you start talking about the angle, the most important thing is to really understand and that an angle is not in a vacuum. It needs to be compared to something. And one of the trickiest parts, at least for drawing about me, is is establishing what is up and down in my drawing that I'm looking at and what is side to side. So by doing this, by just doing this simple little thing here, it really gives my brain a much better idea of what this angle is. If I complete it, I can imagine that it would create a rectangle that is slightly wider than it is tall. Get into sort of thinking about how exact that is, but even that little bit gives me a lot. And I'll show you how one quick example of the ways that this will come in handy. If we're trying to sketch anything that's sort of box-like, and if this is a foreign, or is this a novel idea to you, how I'm doing this, please see my other videos. 3D structure. If I'm trying to draw something like this, figuring out these angled lines is something that seems like it would be kind of simple, but for me isn't, and I have a sense for a lot of people isn't. So the angle of this line, the angle or tilt of this line, etc., etc. When you're drawing in 3 dimensions and trying to have some accurate perspective, you need to make sure that these lines are indeed angling towards each other. Everything going off in this way, slightly. Everything going this way, same thing, slightly angling towards each other. I don't want to get too into perspective, but this is important. And then everything going off this way is also slightly, when I say angled towards each other, I kind of think of these first initial 3 lines as my most important ones. But when I'm trying to figure out those angles, what will help me greatly is to be able to think of that angle in terms of how it relates to what I know, or what I establish is up and down, and what is side to side. Side to side, up and down. Being able to go back and forth between 2 dimensions and 3 dimension, for me, is the trickiest part about drawing. And I think that's, if I get famous and write a book, it would be more on probably the switching back and forth between your 2D brain and your 3D brain versus right brain and left brain. I know there's a lot of stuff in there that I could learn probably, but even figuring that out is going to help me a lot with what that angle is, because I know if I sort of imagine completing this rectangle, that yeah, it's a pretty wide rectangle. If I do the same for this one on the left side, that will give me a really good idea of what that angle is. In context, you know, I guess that's really what I'm kind of talking about, is giving yourself some context to actually gauge semi-accurately what the angle is. So doing these imaginary rectangles around the angled lines is really just giving yourself accurate context, because all these lines that are going in different directions and everything else that's going on in the drawing is screaming and kind of telling you that no, this is up and this is down, no, this is up and this is down. So this is kind of my way of thinking, okay, everybody just be quiet. You guys shut up. I need to figure out what's up and down right now. I'll be doing more videos sort of in sort of real life situations to help continue to understand why this matters or why it's helpful. But for now, just kind of check out the idea of right triangulation, and that's sort of completing from any 2 points. The idea for me is from any 2 points on any drawing is imagining the diagonal between those 2 points and imagining what a right triangle, completing a right triangle, that would look like. The angles of these lines are really important, which I'm sure I mentioned already. But this is a very helpful way for me to sort of gauge, you know, if I'm even on the right track. Because I know that, for example, all these three, I want to make sure I understand how these relate to each other. And if I just look at those angles sort of without any context, it's kind of hard to see just, wow, are they the same? Are they different? But for me, by imagining these rectangles from doing a little right triangulation, it's clear to me that, oh, okay, yeah, this rectangle is much taller than this rectangle, so obviously this angle is a little steeper than this one. And same thing over here. This one is this is an even shorter, wider rectangle. So that tells me that my angling for those is pretty accurate, or at least on the right track. So check that out, and like I said, I'll be doing more on just how to use this in whatever it is you're drawing. Alrighty. Yeah. Okay.